What's up, guys, and welcome to the All 49ers Roundtable. Today I'm joined by not one, but two very special guests. We have Randon and McMahon, as always. Usually we have a show on Tuesdays, but yesterday Randon was unavailable, so we moved it to today. And we got another guest. We got another very special guest, Jamal Armstrong. You've seen him in a lot of your favorite Niner content creators' YouTube chats. He also is a very knowledgeable 49ers fan, knows what he's talking about, very knowledgeable as well. And this is the All 49ers Roundtable. But how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well, man. It's good to be on a show with you. I know we've been talking for, close to a year now that we've been talking back and forth. When I first met you, I think in, like you said, a comment section. But no, I'm doing really well tonight. We're about halfway through the week, so I've got 2 more work days. I'm excited about the weekend that's coming up. I know we've got a lot to talk today about, a lot that's happened with the 49ers. But first and foremost, I'm glad to be here with you. I'm honored and blessed to be here with both of you guys.
Yeah, today has been a good day. Day off. Went in, sold a car on my day off, so that was nice. Made some money there. Met a friend for lunch. Took a nap. Did some stuff around the house. Man, not too bad. And then I just went on just did some podcasting a little bit earlier. Now I'm on with my main man Amin, and it's good to meet you, Jamal. I mean, we've been talking for a little bit online, so it's nice to actually talk face to face with about some Niners football.
Let me say what's up to the chat real quick. We got David McNew. What's up, David? And we got 49er Minded. He says, get Amin the dream to 1,000 subscribers. Get 49er Minded to 1,000 subscribers. One of the greatest intros in all of 49ers content creation world or land. But man, that man has a fire intro. He said, "What's up, what up, Jamal?"
My guy Minded. We got to meet this weekend. I got to see him on Saturday night. Good man.
Yeah, but let's play the intro real quick, and then let's jump right into the topics. Let's do this.
Roger Goodell.
With the 3rd pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Trey Lance.
He came back from 35 to nothing. Was 35 to nothing down? I think it was to win a game, and he was down 35 nothing at halftime, and he won the game 38 to 35.
Was that in the Super Bowl?
No.
Exactly. See, that's the thing about like the ending of this intro. Unless you were there, like it's hard for a lot of people to like, But that ending, like it was. I used to do a show called Tug of Words. I don't know if I told you already, Randon. They used to do a show called Tug of Words a long time ago, trying to bring it back. And it was basically a show where we'd like talk about NFL debates, NBA debates, different things like that. And that was probably like one of the best times one of the most like enjoyable times that I've ever done a show was with that group of guys. And we were talking about Brady versus Montana and a bunch of different stuff. But that was probably one of my favorite shows to do on my YouTube channel. I want to say one last thing. The Grandizer12, he says, yo, Amin, how are you doing? Well, appreciate you for tapping in. My friend who was a 49ers fan since the 1970s said it's those 49ers fans who kept putting pressure to start Trey Lance's fault. Coach Shanahan caved into fan pressure. That is interesting. And we got Niner.
He didn't cave into fan pressure. You spent 3 first-round picks on a kid. You draft him 3rd overall. You play him. That's just like if you look at the quarterbacks who were drafted in the top 5, Trey Lance was 3rd out of the 25 players. Trey Lance played the 3rd least amount of games in his first year. The only other person that was successful playing this least amount of games was Philip Rivers, but he sat behind Drew Brees and I believe Doug Flutie, 2 potential Hall of Famers, 1 for sure. He was 3rd string and he was still drafted in the top 5. So I just don't think that's relevant. Like caving to fan pressure. believe it or not, Kyle Shanahan doesn't give an F about what any of us on YouTube or on whatever. He's going to do whatever he wants to do, and it is what it is,
Yeah, well, let's jump right into it. I mean, this was a hot topic. Obviously, I was at that game, so was Jamal. And I mean, when I saw there was a player down and I realized it was Trey, I was shocked. I was like, this really can't be happening. It wasn't I just couldn't process it in that moment. And then, seeing the cart come out, I was like, I knew it at that point. I was like, it's serious. He's probably out for the season when the cart came out. But there's been a divide on Twitter, and there's been a divide between a lot of Niners fans because some Niners fans saying it's Kyle Shanahan's fault, some Niners fans saying Kyle Shanahan is just utilizing the running ability. So the topic that we're going to start off the show with is who's to blame? Who, in your opinion, is to blame for Trey Lance's injury, or is there someone to blame for Trey Lance's injury, or do you just think it's football and injuries happen?
You know what? I think it's got to be a mixture of all of that, to be totally honest. I think you could break it down into parts. It's not just Trey Lance's fault that he got hurt, because guess what? Injuries are a part of the game. We don't get to pick and decide when they're going to happen, right? Otherwise, nobody would ever be injured because we'd never pick to have an injury, right? Those things happen. Everyone understands and knows that is a part of the consequences of playing this game. And to be totally honest, and I won't go down a whole nother road, but like when you see these guys at this level of play, a lot of them have been durable long enough to be able to show that they're worthy enough to play at this level. And you get to this level, like Trey Lance said, these guys are bigger, faster. This is the first time he's ever played against guys who are just as big and bigger than him, and some are just as fast and faster than him. It's the first time he's run into that type of situation in his lifetime. So one, I think a piece of the pie is, yes, it's on injury luck. Those things do happen. But then you also look at the type of play that was called and, counter bash, which is a run pass option type play. And you say, you know what, for me personally, just my personal opinion, I don't like to see Trey run between the tackles that often. Now, I don't think that he was going to, because if you look at just this game only, it was 3 rush attempts, 3 pass attempts. You'll have some people who are so far on one side that'll say, oh, so does that mean he was going to run the ball 20 times and he was going to pass the ball 20 times? No, I don't personally think that. But I do also think that Trey Lance's strengths don't lie in only his legs, especially even right now, this early in his career. I understand that maybe there are some reservations with him as a passer. At this point in time, he is still developing as not only as in his body, but he's developing as a passer, as a quarterback in general. He's still developing it into that. I don't think that we've seen Trey Lance's final playing weight. I think he has a chance to grow another maybe 10 pounds or so. He's only 22 years old. He's going to get a little bit stronger. So when I look at that, I look at the play that was called. I don't personally love it. And I might be one of in the minority on this. I would rather see him run towards the edges. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think he's the fastest guy. And I know we've had some people come out and say, oh, well, he's not quick enough to run past certain defensive ends. But that also goes back to my point of him not being a runner first. I think he is a scrambler type quarterback. I think his best strength is still using his arm. He's almost the inverse of the quarterback we've got starting and who started the past few years, and Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo's strengths is the short to intermediate range. He's also not the most accurate quarterback, but he's able to, make passes on timing, in rhythm. He's played in the system. He's been in the league long enough to show that part. With Trey Lance, he's only had about 3.5 starts. So at that point in time, you're still learning and growing with the quarterback that you have. So it's hard to say what he is. And sadly, he got hurt. Going into year 3, we still won't fully know exactly what he is. This just comes back to, and then the last part of the pie that I'll say is, yes, it is partly Kyle Shanahan's fault as well, too, because you have to be able to trust your quarterback at some point. Yes, there may be levels to it. And I do think that Kyle Shanahan is more of a control freak, like a lot. But at some point, you have to trust one of your quarterbacks. I don't think this is strictly just a Trey Lance thing. I think he's proven that he doesn't fully trust Jimmy Garoppolo as well, too. And in that part, I do think that some of that is with good reason. I don't think at this point in time, you don't want either one of those quarterbacks dropping back 30 plus times a game. That's not ideal. I don't believe that's in Kyle Shanahan's philosophy. But I do think you have to trust them, especially with your young quarterback. You have to put him in positions to develop if he's going to develop. That might sound a little harsh because I don't think that we've seen enough of Trey Lance to say that he hadn't developed or that he can't develop. I just don't think he's been on the field long enough to be able to show that part. So when you look at just those 6 snaps of the 3 passes and the 3 runs, you can have some of these things where people say, oh, well, he was going to run 20 times because maybe Kyle Shanahan was scared to throw him. I think there's some truth to that, but I don't think it would have been 20 times. Now, I think the minimum number he would have ran is probably 8 times, because when you look back at the Texans game, I think he had 8 rush attempts for 31 yards in that game. I think he was 16 for 23 passing in that as well, too. To me, that was his most complete and best game to date. You look at that game and I say, well, why can't we use his arm a little bit more? But at the same time, I have to always say it was still early in the game. It doesn't mean that he wasn't setting up something for the second quarter, for the third quarter. So I know I'm kind of going on a rant. I want to give the floor to you guys as well, too. But I think if we're going to be fair here, I think it's injury luck. That's part of that. Like, these things do happen. It's a physical sport. Guys get tangled up. Big bodies are always around legs. These things can happen. You have to look at Kyle Shanahan a little bit as well, too, with certain play calls, in my personal opinion, and just maybe the trust or lack thereof at this early stage in his ability as a passer. I think it's a mixture of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree there a little bit. I'm a little bit more harsh on, I mean, he was on pace. I mean, obviously things change. Like you said, it could change throughout the season, but we go with what the stats are given. And in all his starts, he's on pace for over 10 plus rush attempts, closer to 12 rush attempts a game, which would put him over 200 attempts, which would be most by a quarterback ever. And no offense to Trey Lance, but he ain't Lamar Jackson. He ain't Jalen Hurts. He ain't Josh Allen in his running ability. He's just not there yet. Like, yeah, he's quick and he's athletic, but he doesn't seem like a pure runner. I mean, he got 1,000 yards in the FCS. Okay, great. Like, but you're not playing against the top talent. You got all these top talents coming in that are quicker, stronger, faster. Is he really that athletic enough to run for the 1,000 yards? No. Is he athletic enough to run for 500, 600, 700 yards? Yeah, probably. But like, to put him in situations where you're more likely to get beat up, as evidenced by every single running back who's ever played for Kyle Shanahan, is running him through the middle. Like, why not air it out? Like, interceptions are okay. Like, I came into the season like allotting Trey Lance like 15 picks, like almost won a game, right? So, you're like, that's okay. Let's let him throw the football, especially against a team like Seattle, who is garbage, right? There's a team that we should absolutely just dominate them. So, okay, yeah, let him air it out. In the first quarter, he throws a pick. Seattle scores. Okay, maybe we go a little bit more conservative and try to limit his mistakes. But it just seems like you never let him open it up or throw or trust or whatever and do those types of things. It just seemed like he constantly put his player into the wrong situation. Now, Jimmy G had his injury on a run play in open field and got injured. You have players like Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, who get tangled up in the pile, dropping back. I think, and I got asked this question today by Rob Shue, is what if he got injured dropping back, would you feel the same way about Kyle Shanahan? And I openly said no, because that's part of being a quarterback, is dropping back and throwing the football, designing run plays up the middle or not. That's a decision by Kyle Shanahan to call those plays. And so I just feel it differently there, and not putting him in. And maybe that's the trust, like you said, Jamal. Maybe that's the trust with him not throwing the football. But didn't you draft a wide receiver to benefit his skill set in Danny Gray? Didn't you bring in Ray McCloud? Didn't you pay Deebo $25 million? And I'm not even okay with the usage of Deebo Samuel as much as he's running, because I don't believe in paying running backs. And right now, he's a $25 million running back. He ain't a $25 million receiver. So, like, there's a lot about usage and trust issues. And as many people want to say that it doesn't matter, to get any undrafted guy, that guy can dominate in Kyle Shanahan's system. Well, he hasn't had a 1,000-yard rusher. All his players get injured. Like, I mean, the yards per carry are there, but like you saw it last year. Elijah Mitchell came back from injury with broken ribs and stuff like that. Ran the ball 27 times. Like, didn't trust anybody else with the rock. And so, does that benefit the player? No. Does it benefit the person, like the GM in me, where I truly believe that you should just run running backs into the ground and draft a new one every 4 years and never pay them? Yeah, that's my philosophy too. So it's kind counterintuitive here that I'm complaining about it and then also agree with him that you should do it. But in the situation of Trey Lance, he's not a running back. He's your franchise quarterback that you hope to pay a $500 million extension to because he's lighting the world on fire. That's what you hope goes on, and putting him in the worst situation to succeed by running him up the middle. So injury luck happens. It's like you said, it's a brutal sport. Things happen. He could have got tangled up like Joe Burrow did in the pile and Tom Brady. But I just think you look at it as, I don't think he ever gave Trey a fair shake. Like coming out of that game, I get it in the Chicago game, right? Weather, whatever, be conservative, but he was still slinging the rock, and he was rated a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. According to PFF, whether you like that organization or not, they're still rating all the quarterbacks in the league, and he was top 10 until the fourth quarter. So, he was able to throw the football. He made layer throws. He was able to throw it deep. In the Seattle game, he had a free blitzer coming at him and threw a bolt to the slant route. Now, we didn't get the first down, but he took the hit from the guy that was unchecked and delivered a strike. Like, there was a lot of things how it's going there. And I think ultimately it's tough. It's a tough decision to say that it's solely on Kyle Shanahan because there is injury luck, but I do blame a lot of blame for him. And I talked about this multiple times about developing quarterbacks and a coach knowing how to develop a quarterback and doing what's best for the player. If you look at Andy Reid here, he's the only person that I can remember that developed more than one quarterback to be elite status.
Was going to go there.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe Kyle Shanahan doesn't know how to do that. It's also on Trey Lance to be elite, but I feel like Trey Lance is putting in the effort. So maybe Kyle Shanahan isn't that guy. Who knows? But I mean, we won't know. It's not Trey Lance's career isn't over. He'll be the starting quarterback next season. He still has 3 more years left on his rookie deal. So this could all be a moot point, 16 months, 18 months down the road. But right now, some of the judgment pieces, all the way from the drafting of Trey Lance, as far as how much money they spent to not starting him, to the usage of him this year, this makes me think that I don't have that much faith in Kyle Shanahan as far as how he views Trey Lance or how he's going to use Trey Lance. Because then fast forward to next season, he still doesn't have the experience. So are we going to get a big backup? Are they going to be running him fresh off that injury up the middle again? Are they not going to have faith to throw it? So it just leaves a lot of questions. Now, like we talked about before we came on here, I'm not on the fire Kyle Shanahan train. I still think he's one of the elite coaches in this league, and coaches make mistakes. And this could just be a fluke injury, right? You saw the guy fell on his ankle, but you're exposing your quarterback to have more of those hits. And even Justin Fields came out and says, man, he's taken a lot of hits already in this game. And at that time of the injury, he already had 4 hits in that game, right? One in the pocket and then 3 running plays. So it's a little bit of both. I'm not, on the fire Kyle Shanahan train, but I think the fact that he's putting his quarterback that is supposed to be the future of his franchise in non-advantageous positions more than not, and on pace for over 200 carries. When you're looking at the NFL rushing stats for last season, the guys with over 200 carries are Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, Najee Harris, Sean Taylor. Just bell cows, right?
Non-quarterbacks.
Yeah, bell cows. And so, that's the type of thing. And granted, 2 games, small sample size, but that's what we have to do is talk about right now is the sample size because, to your point, things could change. He could be slinging the rock and running 5 times a game on scrambles and then hardly ever design runs. But we have to go on what we have to go on. And ultimately, that's not where I like my quarterback to be, is running over 200 times a season.
Amin, would you mind if I add one thing before we transition over to you really quick?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. No, I think Randon said something that I kind of wanted to touch on too, because I do think that Andy Reid, he would probably make Trey Lance look better earlier in his career than Kyle Shanahan might make him should this work out with Kyle Shanahan by year 3, 4, 5, 6. I do think that Andy Reid's offense and Andy Reid as a coach seems to be someone that is, I hate to use this word because it almost sounds like I'm bashing on Kyle, and I don't mean to, but I almost feel like Andy Reid is self-aware to understand what type of quarterback he has, the skill set they have, and to meet them where they are. he's always looking to implement new things, whether it be from the college system, whether it be something he learned in the NFL. He's always looking to different types of things to help his offense and his quarterback. So I wanted to add that little piece, but I also wanted to talk about.
I think it's more trust. I think it's more trust because he allows Mahomes to be Mahomes. He allows Donovan McNabb to be Donovan McNabb. When you draft a quarterback who has athletic tendencies and has a dual feature, you have to allow him to be that. And part of the great plays of Patrick Mahomes and Donovan McNabb and a lot of the two-threat
and even Alex Smith, what he got out of Alex.
Allowing them to diagnose that being an athlete, hey, I got to get out of the pocket and I got to make a play on the run. Kyle Shanahan doesn't seem to appreciate schoolyard football. He's structure all the time, where you drafted this guy for his ceiling. And his ceiling is not going to be met if he's not allowed to be him. And I think Shanahan has to be okay with Trey, like, okay, I'm looking at my first read. It broke down. I got to move out of the pocket. I got to find somebody on the run. He's got to be okay with that, but it doesn't seem like he is. And then you also have to, like, the other side of that is, Trey has to do the easy things correct in order to be successful. And it has to have a mutual trust. And like you said earlier in the podcast, it doesn't look like he trusts Jimmy G, and he wants to control the situation all the time to the nth degree instead of just letting a little rein out, letting the leash a little bit, and letting him be the player that you thought he could be at that point.
Right. And that adds to the just the little part that I wanted to add to, because I do think Trey's athleticism is almost being overstated to a point. And I hate to say that because he is athletic. He's a very good mobile quarterback, but he's a mobile quarterback, which means to me, in my mind, he's a quarterback with the ability to scramble outside of the pocket. I think that's how he should be used. And if you look even back at college, you can go even to his high school tape, and then what we've seen so far in the NFL, people want to compare this kid unfairly, in my opinion, to Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Those are the names you hear thrown around often in the modern NFL. You hear those two names. Can we not say that Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are just one of one? Like, Lamar Jackson is only generally compared to Michael Vick. That's, in terms of athleticism, that's the elite of the elite. It's those two and then anyone else. And then when you look at Josh Allen, he's also, if not the most, in my opinion, probably the top. In my opinion, he's probably top two most physically gifted quarterbacks we've ever seen. I'd put him, Cam Newton, those two guys up there for what they can do. I think Trey Lance, while he has a similar build, I know I had mentioned, I think just before the podcast, that Trey Lance is still growing. You know, he's a 22-year-old kid. I think he has the ability to add maybe another 10 pounds or so. That's still lighter than Josh Allen, who walks around about 240, 245, and is still that athletic. Trey's about 220, 225. I think he's about an inch and a half, a little bit shorter. But I didn't even want to mention that. I want to mention their running style and the ability. While they're similar because they both can use their legs, I can't tell you how many times I've seen Josh Allen take straight up shots. And I've seen that out of Trey Lance so far in his early career, every single game. And I've seen that in college with the Bison. I've seen that in some of his high school tape as well. Is that something he can get better at as he gets more and more used to the NFL game? Sure. But I also think that Kyle Shanahan's not doing much to help that by telling him, oh, well, it's up to Kyle. It's up to Trey if he's going to slide, you know, and Trey then coming out saying it's on third downs, I'm not going to slide. I'm going to go, you know, try to get that yardage. The mentality, I like that part, but I also don't want to see my quarterback in that position to where they're taking shots like that on a regular basis, because things like this do happen where injuries can occur. I look at Josh Allen and I just don't see that. Now it happens to him. I just don't think it happens to him often. And I think that's something that's a little bit underrated when it comes to Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in particular. I don't see those two guys take the shots that I've seen Trey Lance take early in his career.
Yeah, both of you guys made really great points. And I mean, when you look back at this offseason, you brought in that deep threat in Danny Gray, that speedster that can take the top off your defense. And you've already seen last season that Trey Lance has the ability to hit that deep ball and get that deep ball and, you know, take the top off the defense. So when you look at the offseason, the Niners did everything right? You re-signed Deebo Samuel. They did what they needed to do. And then when you look at the Chicago game, Trey Lance did run a lot. And I think a lot of that, like Brandon said, is because of the weather conditions. It was raining. Be conservative. But then when you look at that Seattle game, I mean, who's to blame for this? I mean, Kyle, I feel like does deserve some blame because I don't think, like Randon said, and like you also said, that it's the smartest position or even the best thing or like the best position to put your quarterback running in between the tackles. And like you said, Randon, Trey Lance isn't Lamar Jackson. Trey Lance isn't Josh Allen. Like when you look at Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson's faster. He's shifty. He's not Lamar Jackson. He is athletic, sure. That's already proven that he's athletic, but he's not Lamar Jackson by any stretch of the imagination. So like when you look at who deserves to blame, deserves some blame, I think Kyle Shanahan deserves some blame for this. Now on top of that, I think yes, it's football. Injuries do happen. So I feel like it's a mix of both because I think Kyle Shanahan didn't put Trey Lance in the best position by running him in between the tackles all the time. He did that he did in the Seattle game. Now obviously Trey Lance got hurt, but I think he did the drive before also. In the red zone, I think he did the drive before where he ran Trey Lance in between the tackles. That's really not really putting your young quarterback in the best position to succeed. So I think Kyle Shanahan deserves some blame for this. I also think it's football. Injuries do happen. Like, and on top of that, I don't know. Like, it really didn't look like Kyle trusted Trey Lance, or like because like if you're not letting him throw the football that much, it was a lot of runs. Like, obviously, we know that the Niners like to run the football, but it really felt like honestly watching that game, even though it was a short game, watching Trey Lance. It almost felt like Kyle wasn't fully trusting Trey Lance and his capabilities of throwing the football. I don't know about you guys, but that's just honestly what it felt like. Running the football, obviously, you know that's what the 49ers do, but running him in between the tackles in red zone situations twice and running him, I mean, it didn't really feel like Kyle Shanahan fully trusted Trey Lance. And same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. We've seen it with Jimmy Garoppolo also. So going back to it, I feel like part of it, Kyle Shanahan does deserve part of the blame. And on top of that, I think it's football and injuries happen, but I think could the situation been avoided to a certain extent? I think it could have been if Kyle just trusted Trey Lance to throw the football. And going back to the athleticism, I think Trey Lance is an athletic quarterback, right? Now, is he Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen? Like I said, no. But the thing that you have with Trey Lance is that Trey Lance can extend plays. He can make throws. You have the ability to make throws on the run, but potential to make throws on the run and have him extend plays for you, like kind of like Russell Wilson in a sense, right? Russell Wilson also, there was one or two design runs from in Seattle in every couple of games, but the thing about Russell Wilson was so dangerous is that running ability when he can extend plays, right? So like compared to like a pocket pass or something like that, Russell Wilson could go roll to his right, roll to his left, and extend plays and make good throws on the run and pressure in crucial situations of the game. And that's what I think Trey Lance potentially could have brought to this offense if he played this whole year, was kind of similar to Russell Wilson, where if the play breaks down, Trey Lance can make a throw on the run. And that's what Trey Lance brings to this offense. Obviously, the deep ball and taking the top off the defense, but that's something that Trey Lance brings to this offense where Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't. That Trey Lance can extend plays with his legs, and Trey Lance can make the throw on the run. And we've seen it before. Now, obviously, he's not always 100% accurate at it, but we've seen it before. So going back to it, part of it's because of Kyle, part of it is because of football and injuries. But at the end of the day, like, there's fans that are saying, I'm not going to root for the 49ers anymore because fire Kyle Shanahan, this organization sucks, whatever, right? At the end of the day, we all have our preferences, right? So some people prefer Trey Lance to start, some people prefer Jimmy Garoppolo to start, but at the end of the day, right, like, Trey Lance is out for the season, and we already know that. So instead of, like, being like, we're not going to root for the 49ers, like, I'm a 49ers fan first. Even though I have I have preferences on who I think should be starting quarterback, at the end of the day, I want my team to do well. Bottom line, I want my team to do well, and I will continue to root for the 49ers, whether Jimmy's at quarterback, whether Ben Kurt's at quarterback. Like, at the end of the day, I want my team to do well, even though I have preferences at who's going to play quarterback. At the end of the day, I want my team to win football games and be successful.
I got to be openly honest, though. I am less excited for the rest of the season because I wanted to see Trey Lance, and that was mainly because I want to see Trey Lance succeed, not because I don't think the Niners can still win games. Is I wanted to see the kid, because I'm a Trey Lance fan, I wanted to see the kid prove everybody wrong. I want to see him light the world on fire. He's easy for me to root for. Like he's like Hufanga. Like I want Hufanga to be, an all-pro just because he just seems like a really good guy, and I wanted Lance to do the same thing. And so, like, yeah, next week, am I going to be watching the game? 100% yes, I am. Am I excited that I would have been to see Trey Lance go battle Russell Wilson one-on-one? Not really. But I think the the pain of the loss of what this season could have been and what I believe Trey Lance could have been this season and leading us to a playoff spot and maybe further will eventually subside because, with loss, you have time and you move on. And then also winning cures all things. And so if we beat Denver in a primetime game, you're really just going to be like, hey, we got to win, get another 2-1. We're cooking now. We're going to go beat the Lambs. And it's just going to snowball for there. But right now, it's okay to be a little upset about, or a little sad or dismiss about what could have been and what I thought Trey Lance would have been this season.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you can go, Jamal.
Okay, sure. No, I would agree with you guys on that, and I also agree with Minded in this part. He said my excitement went from 100 to 30. I actually agree with that part too, because, and I'll just say this really quickly. I think my whole viewpoint, and I think a lot of people will probably relate to this. My viewpoint on this season was, okay, we know Trey Lance is going to be the starter. How much can he develop from game 1 to game 17, and where can we be playoffs wise, pole position wise? Where can we be at that point in time? Through those 17 games, yes, they count, right? Those ones count. You have to win enough of them to at least get a wild card spot to make the playoffs. Knowing that we had a Super Bowl caliber roster team, I wanted to, and I think Kyle Shanahan, the whole team wanted this as well too, is to match up Trey's development process, have him sit a year, have him start this year, see how far he can get developmental wise with a good team around him, and see what we can do in the playoffs this year. So that's why my excitement was at 100 to see where he would be at. And then once you get into the playoffs, right? Like, how far can you go? Can they lead this young kid in a similar way that they led Jimmy Garoppolo? And can Trey Lance also provide that little bit extra in terms of the big playability that might be enough for this one season to get them over the hump and to win a Super Bowl? Now, I'm not saying that would happen. That's the goal. That was the hope in my mind, is for them to get into a Super Bowl and win, and maybe have Trey Lance just be the extra little bit of seasoning, or extra little bit of athleticism, extra little bit of big playability for them to win. Because I already think they have a Super Bowl ready roster and a Super Bowl ready defense. Now, when he goes away, I'm still thinking we have a Super Bowl caliber roster. We still have a good team. We know what we have with Jimmy Garoppolo, but the excitement level, like he said, drops down a little bit for me. And I was looking at next year after this season with the healthy Trey Lance to then be like, okay, now I think we have a legitimate shot at making a Super Bowl, like Super Bowl aspirations. He's going to be going into his second year as a starter, and I'm hoping he can develop even a little bit more than he was even after this year. So when our excitement goes from 100 down to that far, it's probably because we were hoping for Trey Lance's development with this Super Bowl caliber roster kind of meshing together.
Yep, and even if you look at like the matchups that are coming up, right? Like I was talking to one of the kids at school, and he's a Denver Broncos fan, and he was talking about like what's your score predictions and all that. Like the excitement level just goes down because I was looking forward to seeing Trey Lance this year. I was looking forward to seeing the ups. I was looking forward to seeing the downs. And I mean, week 3, Russell Wilson against Trey Lance, Sunday Night Football, prime time. Like there was a lot of good matchups this year. Like Justin Herbert versus Trey Lance, Mahomes versus Trey Lance, Tom Brady versus Trey Lance, and that 49ers team. There was a lot of interesting matchups and there's a lot of tough games also, right? Like these are all tough teams, but there was a lot of fun and interesting matchups and interesting games that were coming up on the schedule, and it was going to be fun to see whether Trey Lance in that team can, handle the pressure and take care of business. And now with Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, obviously, I feel like this team still has a good chance of making the playoffs and being successful. But definitely, yes, the excitement level does go down. And even going back to the offseason, before, training camp and all that, a lot of people were doubting Trey Lance. And this was happening back when he was in high school, through when he was in college, pre-draft process. And especially now that he was on the 49ers, a lot of us felt like, including myself, that this was a year where Trey Lance was going to silence the doubters, and he was going to prove his worth, and he was going to prove why the 49ers drafted him, and he was just going to prove the doubters wrong in general. And now that he's injured, he's not going to be able to get the opportunity to do that. And us as fans won't get the opportunity to see it. So obviously, yes, the excitement level definitely goes down.
I think you look from a developmental standpoint, ultimately the recipe for success outside of the Tom Brady's and stuff like that is you draft a high-level quarterback, you try to win a Super Bowl and stack your roster and win it with him under his rookie contract. Well, you wasted 1 year for his in the opening year. Whether you agree that he should have started or not, that's a moot point, but it's already been wasted. As far as in-game development. Yeah, I'm sure he got better as a quarterback, studying and being on the bench. But in-game development is what I truly felt he needed. Now, this season, like you said, it was supposed to take his lumps, go back and forth. You look at Jalen Hurts last year, had a completion percentage in the 50s, took his lumps, and he looks a lot better this year coming into the league, right? So you're hoping then that, okay, well, Trey Lance will have a good roster. He'll come in, we'll take his lumps. Even if we don't win the Super Bowl this year, now we have 3 years left on the rookie deal to where his development should give us a legit shot and be Super Bowl contenders every single one of those 3 seasons. And now now that 3-year window, so to speak, goes to a 2-year window, right? Yeah. And then even in that, and then one of those 2 years is the 5th-year option where his salary is going to shoot up. Mm-hmm. So to under true rookie deal, you really only have 1 year, which is going to be 2024. So
correct.
All right. So at that point, it just like the window gets smaller and smaller to try to achieve, which in my mind, as soon as they said they were going to move up into 3, okay, great. We have 5 years to win a Super Bowl with a rookie contract, because that's the recipe. You know, you have Mahomes, you have Russell Wilson, outside of the Tom Brady's, who, let's not forget, he lowered his contract so they could get more players on his roster. His wife makes $400 million a year. So, you know, he doesn't need the money. He just wants to win. But
endorsement money's nice too.
Yeah. After you get up in there in salary, you really lose a lot of the ability, right? I mean, they were going to be able to move Jimmy's contract next year, get an extra $25 million, do all this kind of stuff, and really stack the team next season. Like, as much as I was looking forward to this season, I would have been insufferable next offseason. Just the excitement that I would have had going into 2023 would have been outrageous. And so it just really kind of hampers that. Now, I got one question for you guys. Obviously, Jimmy G, we know what he is. The roster is a Super Bowl caliber roster. Did we make an improvement in the offseason that can get us over that hump to where the roster can win as it is right now?
You know what? That's funny that you say that, because Nate wanted to talk a little bit last night. Well, he didn't want to talk about it. He actually stated this, and I don't know if I agree with it yet, because
we have the topic. We have the topic coming up. Are the 49ers still Super Bowl contenders with Jimmy Garoppolo now at quarterback? And you kind of added another question to it. Did they add enough in the offseason? Did they do enough to kind of, you know, help out Jimmy G and to improve this team? So let's ask the question. Are the 49ers still Super Bowl contenders with Jimmy Garoppolo? Did they do enough in the offseason?
Yes. In my opinion, yes, they are still Super Bowl contenders. And it goes back, my mind goes to this, and Nate talked about this a little bit last night as well, too. This defense, I think, is going to be the identity of this team still, right? And health is a big thing. Every team says that, right? The more healthier teams usually go further in the playoffs because they're healthy, and you have guys with a lot of continuity. And if you get hot at the right time, you really have to make the playoffs, right? And you have a chance to potentially get hot and win a Super Bowl. You look at the way the Rams are playing right now, and you say, how did they win last year, right? Like, we kind of coughed it up a little bit. You know, they had to have the metal to be able to make us a little bit more one-dimensional in the NFC Championship game. So it's not like they weren't game. It's not like they weren't up for it. But the 49ers still have the better roster. Even now, I would say that. I would say so. So it's all about getting hot at the right time. Yes, like you had just mentioned, and I think all three of us have said this to some extent. We know what we have with Jimmy Garoppolo. We understand there's going to be some ups and downs. And that's why many of us said with Trey Lance, it should be a similar sort of ceiling or level, because he's also probably going to have his ups and downs too. It's not like we haven't seen that over the past 4 to 5 seasons and the whole time under Kyle Shanahan's tenure. Jimmy Garoppolo is a starting caliber quarterback. He is. He's shown that he has the ability to go out there and make enough plays in order to put yourself in position to win. Now, it might look a little bit more like game manager at times, and every now and then you go to the Saints game, 2019, you have a game where he just plays outrageous. Like, that can happen. That can happen for any player. You look at just this past week, Tua goes for 469 and 6 tutties. I'm telling you, he's not going to do that every week, but he has the ability to do that from time to time. Can you win with Jimmy Garoppolo? 100% you can. I think a lot of fans, and myself included, we're at a point where it's, can he raise his level of play in the playoffs, or can he even just be average in the playoffs and maybe not mess things up, or can he keep us on schedule? Can we stay on the field on third down? I know that was a struggle for us to start really the first half of last season. We started 3-5. At that point in time, we were like sub 30% on third downs. You look at Trey Lance's first couple starts this year, even in that monsoon game, I think he was 8 of 17. It's like 40, 41, something like that percent. That's really good. Yes, I think 5 of those first downs were with his legs and 3 were by the throw. So for me, I look at stats like that. What can you do on third down? Can your defense not have to be on the field as much? So can you have time of possession? Can you win that? I look at stats like that, and I look at, can we stay ahead of the sticks, or can we stay on schedule on first? I mean, we're going to continue to run the ball often. That was going to be the case with Trey, and it's going to be the case still with Jimmy Garoppolo. This is still a run first team. You're going to get some play action off of that as well. You look at the touchdown to Ross Dwelly. That was off of play action. So you look at things like that, and I say, yes, this team can still win a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. My concern and my question, as I hand it over here to Randon, is when let's say you get to another Super Bowl, or I won't even say Super Bowl. When you get to the playoffs, you're playing the best of the best. At that point, they're going to do everything within their power to stop whatever team they're playing, like their strength, right? What is their strength? Can we take it away? And if we can't, can we limit it, right? When it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo, that's why I have those questions. Can he raise his level of play at that point in time if the 49ers go through some adversity with the run game and maybe they're, 2nd and 12, 3rd and 13, things like that? Can he stay on the field consistently? Can he be a part of the reason to make enough plays? I question that. I really do. But I do think this team is talented enough to win a Super Bowl, and they're absolutely still Super Bowl contenders for sure.
Yeah, I think they're contenders here. And, my question is, what do they do? Where did this team improve to maybe make that little small difference, right? Because every game comes down to a few plays. And what are those plays that happen, and how is this team going to be better? Well, obviously we're assuming health in the situation. So getting Dre Greenlaw back for the full season, even though he looked like a buffoon in week 1, definitely made up for it in week 2. Arguably the best linebacking core in the NFL with him and Aziz in there. So that should definitely help. If Kinlaw, obviously, we're all assuming health, this is based on the conversation, having better presence in the middle of the defensive line all season is going to help us with the run game going forward. So not only that, you're looking at the difference between this year and 2019 when we were in the Super Bowl. You're getting over 20-plus sack Nick Bosa, not rookie Nick Bosa. So the presence of the defensive line there and having a true elite pass rusher consistently, game in and game out, is going to be a thing. But I think the number one thing that could change this team is this is the best secondary this team has ever had, in my opinion. And so when you're playing all the elite teams with elite quarterbacks come with elite wide receivers. They come with the Cooper Kupps, the Jamar Chases, and all this kind of stuff. And you're never going to take those guys 100% out of the equation. But when you have an elite defense and you have those tops, the Legion of Booms and the Ravens defenses, you can win with middle of the ground quarterbacks, because the fact that the defense is so elite and you're taking the other offense out of the equation, you can win those types of games. Now, that's where I think the biggest difference is. I think where a lot of the question marks still lie is in the run game, right? Mitchell can't stay healthy. There's really nobody behind him that Shanahan trusts. I don't trust Jeff Wilson to be our bell cow for 16 weeks or whatever and into the playoffs, right?
Hopefully we don't know if he can stay healthy.
Yeah. Hopefully Mitchell is ready to go by the playoffs, and we just need to get in and he can be the Mitchell that we know. But I think the after the high ankle sprain of TDP, what he can do when he comes back healthy in those 6 games between when he's going to be playing and Mitchell comes back, can we get a legit backup that if an injury does happen in the playoffs that you feel comfortable with a guy in there? I think that's a big question mark. The offensive line, the continuity going forward, will they continue to progress with the 2 young guards? I think that's a big question mark there. But then you can also argue that this might be the best receiving core in their prime that Jimmy G has had, right? Last year, Ayuk was still making efforts towards the end of the season, getting better. I think he's more dominant. I think Deebo Samuel's still an elite. They bring in Ray McLeod, who is definitely better than Travis Benjamin. You get Danny Gray in there. So I think the receiving core is a lot better. And like I said, assuming health going forward, I think there's a lot of positives that might be that little fraction to get the team over the hump. And lastly, Jimmy's contract is 100% based on how far he goes this season. He's getting those per game, the small bases, but the real money comes in to get to 15, 16 million is playoff money. And it seems like he's playing with house money, right? I already said in the Seattle game, throwing a lot more deep balls, the tight end, touchdown there. Like, I don't need him to throw 70, 60 yards in the air and hit a guy streaking downfield. How many of those plays happen during a season? Very few. But will he start stretching the ball outside the numbers, 15, 20 yards? Like, will you start trying to hit those routes? I mean, Dwelly was wide open. So, I mean, he should have hit that route. But will he start trying to fit those balls in and see if he can do it? I think that's going to definitely limit what the chat is saying, is that teams have schemed him by putting 8 people in the box and making him beat him on the outside. So, that's something to consider. I think ultimately the team has made enough incremental steps to win better playoff games, and I think that's going to come with the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, we obviously talked a little bit about the offseason. I talked about it briefly, but you look at the NFC Championship game, and you look at the receivers in particular, Cooper Kupp and OBJ both went over 100 yards that game, right? And we were talking about that offseason. Like, I mean, the corners, where the 49ers going to do, that's a position of need. And the 49ers went and got Charvarius Ward, had an interception on Sunday. And are the 49ers still Super Bowl contenders? I definitely think they are, right? And obviously we know when Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy, we've seen that 49ers and Kyle Shanahan and this team can make it to the playoffs and can be a threat in the playoffs. But then you look at that defensive line, we already know what that defensive line can do. But then the biggest thing, like Randon said, was that secondary. And Emmanuel Mosley has another year where he was probably one of the most underrated corners last year, but he probably got better last year than he did this year. Or he's probably gotten better this year than he was last year, right? The more experience. And you look at Charvarius Ward. I mean, Charvarius Ward so far has been looking like a steal for the 49ers, and he's been looking really good throughout training camp, throughout, obviously, the first 2 games. He's been looking pretty good. So, I mean, are the 49ers still Super Bowl contenders? I definitely do think so. And the secondary obviously improved in the offseason. We already know what this 49ers team can do with Jimmy Garoppolo healthy. And this team, I think, got better this season than they were last year. So I definitely think the 49ers are still Super Bowl contenders. Now, obviously, in the playoffs, I feel like one thing is that Jimmy Garoppolo can't make as many crucial mistakes. And I feel like if Jimmy Garoppolo can just limit some of his mistakes in the offense in general, and that whole team in general can limit some of the crucial mistakes that they make in crucial situations and crucial parts of the game, I think this 49ers team can be a threat. I think this 49ers team can make the playoffs. And I definitely think this 49ers team is still Super Bowl contenders. They definitely got better in the offseason. And we've already seen what this 49ers team can do with Jimmy Garoppolo under center. And like I said, this team has definitely gotten better in the offseason with the secondary and the defense. The 49ers are definitely still Super Bowl contenders. Now, obviously, we would love to see Trey Lance in this 49ers team, and Trey Lance lead this team to the playoffs and watch him, be in the wild card game or play in the divisional game. Obviously, that would be exciting. But either way, this 49ers team is a playoff team, and I think they're still Super Bowl contenders.
Can I ask you guys a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So just in regards to this defense, I know some people who are having the question, the dialogue, and it's not there yet. They're having the dialogue. Can this defense this year be better than 2019? I'm not sure. I got to see it, right? I actually still believe that 2019 season was historic. Now, top to bottom, I think depth chart wise or roster wise, is this roster maybe more talented depth wise than 2019? I think you for sure could argue that, because you get younger Charvarius Ward, who is clear. He has shown he's a CB1. You have him. And you're kind of comparing that to Richard Sherman. While Richard Sherman was still very good, he was very good in 2019. It's still older, and some of his deficiencies, as having some older legs at that point in time, kind of showed up. Some of those deficiencies showed up later in the season and were on display in the Super Bowl as well. You get Charvarius Ward over there at CB1. You have a further developed Emmanuel Mosley, who's, in my opinion, had a very underrated, probably should have been a Pro Bowl season type last year. I thought he was really good. He's now your CB2 rather than your CB1. And then you have, I'll say, solid depth behind him. We don't really know exactly what there are. I'll say unproven depth, because you've got young guys. You've got Ambry Thomas. You've got Samuel Womack, and I kind of wanted to talk about him for a second too. He's not been targeted a whole lot through these first 2 weeks, but he's been targeted, I think, 7 times. he has given up about 30 yards. I think a little less than 30 yards. He's playing really well too. And like I said, it's 2 weeks through the season. It's too early to say what he will or won't be. But you look at him and what his role can be as our new nickel corner, especially the starting corner, and you kind of look at him compared to K'Wan Williams, who was really good in 2019 as well. I believe that was K'Wan Williams. You could argue that was K'Wan Williams' best season of his career. I think it was. I thought he was locked down that season. And then 2020 and 2021, slowly kind of just starting to take his steps back as he's getting a little bit older in his career, although still a very good nickel right now. But you look at that, you kind of look at some of the similarities and the differences. And then as Randon and both of you guys just said, health permitting. So should this team stay healthy, can it be better than 2021? Potentially. My question to you, though, is more about the defensive line and the secondary being married together. If those two things can get married together, if this secondary is what we think it is, in being the best secondary that has we've seen under this regime with Kyle Shanahan, my question is, do you guys think this defensive line has more sacks than we did last year, which I think we ended with 48?
I think, to answer the 2019 question, I think obviously small sample size, but, in 2019, we were a positive 0.4 turnover differential per game. Last year, negative 0.2. So, the turnovers seem to be there so far early. Granted, we're playing a Justin Fields and a Geno Smith, so that could change quite a bit going forward. But ultimately, in the small sample size, I think the secondary is going to be able to take a lot more balls away this season. And, it's not only up to the offense to keep your defense off the field. It's creating short drives for the other team because you're getting 3 outs and you're getting turnovers to get some puffs late in games. And the Niners team last year just wasn't good at it. And you're looking at they're getting guys off the street. Now, granted, as much as you want to throw shade at some of those guys, I mean, the punch outs for I'm falling on his name right now.
Josh Norman.
Yeah, Josh Norman.
Yeah.
He created 7 turnovers on his own, but like the picks weren't there. We weren't, there was a lot of drives that were bending and then we would break at the end of games because the defense was on the field so much because we weren't creating that many turnovers. So as far as can it be better than 2019? I think it can. I think there's a lot of positives here and there. I mean, Sherman was towards the end of his career. He was still playing high football. I think the 1-2 punch that you have with Mosley and Shavarius Ward as a whole is a lot better. I think Jimmy Ward is at this time in his career knows exactly what his role is, and I think he's gotten even better there. Can Hufanga be better than Tart? So far, it shows yes, but it's 2 games. So I'm not going to jump on that train yet to call him a Hall of Famer or an All-Pro. But the linebacking core, I think, is a little bit better. The defensive line, we'll see how much Kinlaw progresses. So I think there's a lot of what ifs there, but you see the track that this team could go on, this defense could go on to be better than 2019. As far as what was your second question there, Jamal?
What was my second question? Oh, the
More
sacks wise. Could we have more sacks?
2019
Yeah.
and 2022.
Yeah. So, obviously Bosa's on pace for 25.5. Will he get that? Possibly. But easily over 20 sacks there. So now you need less help from everywhere else. D Ford obviously was a sack machine when he was on the field and you had better interior rushing, but you see the progression. Like if Armstead has his progression there that he had towards the end of this last season, consistent from the interior. Kinlaw is eating bodies up in the center, and you rotate that outside. I mean, I think you could. I mean, we're not doing so well so far, right? I think we have 4, right? So we're not. I think we're 19th in the league. So that's got to get going more. But you have 2 mobile quarterbacks in the first two games. Will that change with the likes of guys that are in the pocket all the time to where they can pin their ears back a little bit more? We'll see. So I mean, I think it's all there because. The debate of pass rush over coverage. I've always been a coverage guy, but they are symbiotic and they have to work together. You have to be able to guard guys to allow your defensive line to get there. And I think you saw it in the Chicago game. There was a lot of times where they just didn't finish. They got to the quarterback and didn't finish. And so, they got to get better at that and getting those one-handed sacks that you pull a guy down and do those things. But, the league leader in sacks has been the Steelers, I think, for 4 straight seasons. Because they have an elite pass rusher in TJ Watt that's getting 20 plus sacks a season. And if Nick Bosa can be that, it's obviously going to be within the cards for the Niners to be in the realm of the top 5, if not number 1 in sacks for the league, if Bosa continues on the path that he's been doing.
Yeah, to answer the 2019 question as well, I mean, you look at the secondary. I think this secondary is obviously it's still too early, but I think the secondary is so far the way it looks is better than that 2019 secondary. Now you mentioned it, right? Richard Sherman, obviously older, but obviously still a really, really good player at that time, and that 2018 season. I mean, he was injured, couldn't stay on the field, and that 2019 season he had a couple interceptions, had a major bounce back season, but obviously Charvarius Ward, a little bit younger. So they talk about that secondary. I think the secondary, if they can stay healthy, has a lot of potential. But I think that secondary, I think, is better than that 2019 secondary. And then you mentioned K'Wan Williams. I think K'Wan Williams, like I agree with both of you guys. I think he had one of his best seasons that year. But then obviously Emmanuel Mosley, I mean, he was young at that time, but now Emmanuel Mosley has more game experience, probably gotten better just playing, and he was locked down on Sunday. DK Metcalf, I will say though, DK Metcalf had an amazing catch. He like caught it on his like bicep, like that was a phenomenal catch. But really, Emmanuel Mosley has been really, really good, and he's one of the most underrated cornerbacks in the league. So I think the secondary definitely, I would say, is better than that 2019 secondary. And when you look at the defensive line, I think if you're just looking at the main guys on that 2019 defense, I think the main guys are like Bosa, Ford, DeForest Buckner, Armstead. I think those guys probably are better than this defensive line, but this defensive line has more depth, right? You look at Hassan Ridgeway, Kevin Givens, Javon Kinlaw. Obviously, we know the main guys in Nick Bosa and Armstead, but this defensive line definitely has more depth. So if you do have injuries throughout the season, you still have guys that can come in and be impactful on this defense and that can help this defensive line out. So I think this defense definitely has the potential to be better than that 2019 defense. All the pieces are there. You have a great secondary. You have a pretty darn good defensive line. Have the best linebacker core in football with Aziz Greenlaw, who you resigned for who you extended for another 2 years, and Fred, and then Hufanga, who's been looking like a stud throughout the first 2 weeks of the season. Arguably the MVP of the 49ers the first 2 weeks of the season. Ball hawk, and Jimmy Ward isn't even there yet. So imagine Jimmy Ward, Talanoa Hufanga. This Niners defense at full strength, if they can stay healthy, is a really darn good defense. So I think it definitely has the potential to be better than that 2019 defense. All the pieces are definitely there.
And I think, you know what? I think you guys actually helped me kind of come to maybe more of my conclusion. And it's still like we have to see the season play out, right? But I think I'm comfortable now saying that this season, this team might be more opportunistic, if that makes sense. I think that they may have more turnovers. They're probably going to have more picks than we had in 2019. But also, like you had just said there, Amin, because of the depth that we have on that defensive line and the ability to rotate, and for teams not to be able just to key on a Nick Bosa or to just key on an Armstead, I think that's huge. But I also want to mention this because I think it was a big loss if Javon Kinlaw doesn't turn out how I think he could turn out. DJ Jones. I know it wasn't 2019 that I'm thinking of, although because I think he was hurt that season or he got hurt that season. But last year, what DJ Jones did for us, and then to lose him too.
He's been a stud in Denver. He's been a stud in Denver. There's literally clips all over the internet, and Broncos fans are praising DJ Jones. And that's the thing. DJ Jones was doing that with the 49ers. It just, the 49ers had Nick Bosa and D Ford and DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead, so he would get overlooked at times. But I mean, DJ Jones is basically doing the same thing that he was doing with the 49ers. He's getting recognized more for it because the Denver defensive line, I mean, they have some guys, right? Bradley Chubb, they had Randy Gregory, they added him. Yeah. But, I mean, he's definitely getting more recognition now because that 49ers defensive line obviously has a lot of stars. So, obviously, I'm happy for him. He's getting more recognition, and he's basically doing the same thing that he was doing in San Francisco. You could argue at a higher level in Denver, but I'm glad he's getting recognition for it.
Right, and I agree with that. And I think, like you just said, it was a bit more underrated when it's with the 49ers outside of maybe the 49ers fan base. I think many of us knew what we had, and we knew what we lost, but we also knew that we had Kinlaw coming back, so we had the hope that he could stay healthy, right? And then it was a full-time slide in for Armstead, or last year, it was the last half of the season, Armstead slid in. So having him and DJ Jones, like they were a major reason why we were able to really shut down in the run game. Then you look at this season, and one of the philosophies that I'm starting to I'm starting to like more is I like it when teams can't just key off on one guy. If you look at the Cowboys, they've got Micah Parsons, and when he's lining up as a pass rusher, teams are looking to probably want to double team that guy because he's a menace. That kid's insane. Micah Parsons is awesome. But then you look at the 49ers and you look at what we happened to do to them just last year in the playoffs. Yeah, you had Nick Bosa, but Nick Bosa got hurt that game, right? Did it change anything? No, not at all, because we had the depth behind him and we had the depth on the other side of the field and the ability to keep guys fresh. So they're pass rushing on fresh legs. And the 49ers had a chance to add this year a second round player with, in my opinion, first round talent in Drake Jackson. You have the ability to add him in. If he can stay healthy, his development will be nice. Right now, he's probably more of a rotational third down, maybe specialist in terms of pass rusher. You've got Ebukam as the starter, but I like that. I'm trying to paint that as a positive in a good light because I actually think that's a good thing with the depth behind him. You have Charles Omenihu in a contract year. Like these, you have Samson Ebukam on a new contract. I think these are good. These are good things to have. You have the depth. You can't just key off on a Nick Bosa. You can't just key off on an Armstead. If Kinlaw starts to break out and become the guy that we think, hopefully he's going to be more involved as a pass rusher as well too. That I would hope so. You can't key off just on one of those guys, which provides us with more one-on-one opportunities. That's kind of where my question came. Could they potentially have more sacks this year than 2019 with the marriage of the secondary and this defensive line potentially being even just marginally better or similar to what we had last year?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm going to get another stream in this week. So to be on the safe side, let's talk about this 49ers and Broncos matchup. Now, obviously, Sunday Night Football, prime time, was expecting to see Trey Lance versus Russell Wilson, first primetime game. Super excited. Had this marked on the calendar. Well, probably the first real test for this 49ers team this season, going up against this Denver Broncos team. I'll be honest, Russell Wilson and that Broncos team hasn't been as good or hasn't looked as good as I thought they would. Now, obviously, it's still early on in the season and things can definitely change. But it's definitely, I was watching that. I was at the Niners game and I'm looking at the score and the score against the Broncos Texans game and they're like 6-6. And I'm like, the Broncos haven't even scored a touchdown and they're going up against the Texans. What's happening? Right? So, let's talk about this game. What do you think are the keys for the 49ers in order to win this game? And then after we'll talk about score predictions. But what do you think the 49ers have to do if they want to come out with a victory on Sunday Night Football?
Go ahead, Randon, take that one.
Oop, I think you're muted.
My bad.
Yeah.
I think, ultimately it's, I'm gonna assume that both Surtain and Judy are gonna play. Obviously, they're injured right now. They didn't practice today, so that could be a big factor. Obviously, you take the number one corner and a good weapon out of Russell Wilson's hands could definitely, factor the tide there. But ultimately, I think the Denver Broncos run game has been a lot better than what we saw out of Seattle and definitely in Chicago during the weather. I think they're averaging over 5 yards per carry right now. They probably have the best 1-2 punch maybe outside of Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison. Melvin Gordon still has a little bit of juice left in his knees towards the end of his career. And Javonte Williams, I think, is one of the best young running backs in the NFL. So I think the run game is going to be huge for them. I think, and then you have obviously the best quarterback we've faced so far. So is the secondary just looking good because of the fact that we're locking down receivers against quarterbacks that aren't as effective as Russell Wilson? I think those are going to be the two things. It's just going to be our defense versus their offense and how we stack up, and can the defense that we've got finished praising really come through on its first big test and get those picks against the ghost of Christmas past and Russell Wilson, has all those fourth quarter comebacks, who I think only has 4 losses against this Niner team in his career. So, he knows how to beat us. He knows what they're going to try to do to contain him. Obviously, he's on a different team, different offense, but the knowledge still is going to be a factor. And so how's our defense going to respond to its first big test of the season? Can we get some key turnovers in this game and capitalize on that? And ultimately, it's a foolish thing to say, but if you score more points than the other team, you win those games. And so if you can hold the team to field goals and get those key stops and some turnovers, hopefully then at that point, it doesn't really matter what our offense does. They could be mediocre and we still win this game, at a 19-8 or 19-12 or 21-12, somewhere in there. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a one-score game. I think the defense is going to have to get tested a little bit, and hopefully they respond well. Cortland Sutton, isn't DK Metcalf, but he's still an accomplished receiver in his own right. Jerry Jeudy, they move him around the field all the time. And so, will the defense have one of the corners shadow him no matter where he goes? Will they trust Womack to guard Jeudy in the slot? We'll see. Yeah, that's going to be very interesting there. And so there's like kind of a lot of good battles that I'm interested to see from the Niners defense against the best offense that we've seen so far going forward. So that's what I'm most looking forward to, and I think it's also the biggest key of the game.
Okay, if you don't mind, Jamal, if I could go first on this one. Oh, I think you're muted, Jamal.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a fun matchup, right? Obviously, we know Russell Wilson, a lot of people say this Russell Wilson's the 49ers kryptonite. Now, obviously, instead of him being in black or navy, whatever, navy blue, and with Seattle, he's in orange and white with the Denver Broncos. So, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see him, familiar face, but with a new jersey, found a new home. So it's going to be fun. I mean, this cornerback matchup is going to be fun, right? Travarius Ward, Mosley against Sutton. If Judy's healthy and he's available, it's obviously going to be fun cornerback wide receiver matchup to watch. And you mentioned it, Randon. I mean, this defense, it's going to be interesting to see because they're going up against their best quarterbacks that they faced all season. The Broncos have they have a decent offensive line, a good, solid offensive line. They have weapons. So this is going to be a pretty darn good. This is going to be an interesting matchup. Let's see how this 49ers defense, squares off against this Denver Broncos offense. So it's going to be a fun matchup. And obviously, we know with this 49ers team, if Jimmy Garoppolo can limit his mistakes, not make any bad decisions, not, have costly interceptions, and then with the 49ers offense, it's pretty much the key for a lot of the games, even last year, was can the 49ers run the football effectively? Because that's their bread and butter. Is the 49ers can run the football effectively, and that's how the 49ers win football games a lot of the time, is where they run the football, pound the football down your throat, have 20 or whatever carries, split have one back, take a lot of the carries, and, share some of the carries and give some of the other guys some opportunities to get the ball. But that's how this 49ers team really wins games, is by running and pounding the football down your throat, playing good defense, being physical, winning in the trenches, and that's what the 49ers have to do if they want to win this game. Now, obviously, like I said, it's going to be a fun matchup overall. It's going to be a fun matchup. Obviously, we would love to see Trey Lance in this game, but he's out. But it's going to be an interesting matchup. Sunday Night Football, prime time. Like, I love prime time games, right? Everybody's watching it, but it's always tough waiting to 5:20, waiting for your team to play. You're watching football all Sunday, and you got to wait till 5:20 or whatever time. Randy, you're in Texas, so I think it's like 7:20 to watch the 49ers. Yeah. But it's obviously fun watching your team in prime time, but it sucks kind of waiting. I don't know.
I'll be busy all day. I'll be busy all day. I'll be at a Rangers game until the game, so I'll be distracted. Yeah, until
you'll be distracted, but I'll be sitting there watching like the Rams or whatever, and I'm like waiting for this Niners game to come on. But it's gonna be fun. It's definitely gonna be fun. I have kids at school that are Broncos fans. We've been talking about it all week, and so it's definitely gonna be an exciting matchup. And hopefully the 49ers come out with a W and they go 2-1 on Sunday Night Football.
Absolutely. And I believe you guys made pretty much all the points. You made great points. I'll just raise a couple things, or maybe just raise even just a couple questions or things that I hope fans will be looking for or will watch this coming Sunday night as we play them. And that is, I'll start with the running backs. Obviously, Marlon Mack was elevated, right, to the 53-man roster. We just signed Tevin Coleman as well to the practice squad. I'm wondering if there's a potential that we see, obviously Jeff Wilson, I think he'll probably be RB1 still, as he should be probably at this point, Jeff Wilson. But will we see Marlon Mack as RB2? Will we see Tevin Coleman get called up? And what does this mean for Jordan Mason? Like, we saw him play in the preseason, and it was solid, really good. I actually think he runs really hard. He runs with attitude, and I think his vision has been proven to be really good. Yes, it's preseason. I understand that, but it's still NFL players. I'd like to see him get some run. I understand Kyle Shanahan has been using him on special teams, and he's been really good on special teams. But I believe what we saw out of the preseason out of this kid shows that he's so much more than just a special teams ace or just a special teams guy. So one thing to watch there is look for the running backs. Does Jordan Mason log an NFL carry? We know TDP just got hurt with the high ankle sprain, as Randon talked about a little bit earlier as well too. Or does Kyle say, you know what, I got to go with the veterans that I know. I know he hasn't been on this team long, but Marlon Mack, he's a wily veteran, been in the league, 5-6 years now. And then you've got Tevin Coleman, who's not only a vet, but has been in our system before too. Will those guys get called
He's also
up?
a 1,000-yard rusher, Marlon Mack.
He is, right. Was that 2019 season he did? Or was that the season he got hurt? I can't remember.
It was his third season in the league. He ran for 1,000 yards. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So exactly. He's a very talented back. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. Outside of that, I think you guys mentioned it as well too. You talked about Jerry Jeudy. Will he play? They also have KJ Hamler, who's more of a deep threat, and I'm kind of curious about him. Like, will he play as well too? And then you also mentioned Pat Surtain, right? I'm going to assume with guys like that, you assume that they play, especially this early in the season. I know that they're 1-1 now, but they're struggling. And I had talked about this on Twitter maybe about a month and a half or so ago. I actually said, I know the AFC West is tough, arguably I think it is the toughest division in football now. But you look at all four of those teams in that division and you say, man, like these teams could make the playoffs. All four of them could make the playoffs should they be in separate divisions. There's going to be someone from this group that just doesn't make the playoffs, right? At least two at the minimum. But I look at the Broncos and I say this, and I said this about a month and a half ago. I think that they're still going to contend for a wild card spot because I do think that either the Chiefs or the Chargers will probably win that division. Until the Chiefs lose, I'll go ahead and give them the nod. But I look at this Broncos team and I say, you know what? I feel like they can slide into a wild card spot. I actually said that they would start slow. Now, I didn't think it was going to be quite like this, and I didn't go back and actually watch the Texans game. I kind of do. I kind of want to go look at it now just to see what I'm noticing now and in their slow starts compared to maybe what I can expect in this Niners game. But I just look at them and I say, you know what? I think they're still going to be a little bit slow. And this is, in my opinion, the best defense that they're going to have faced through the first 3 weeks as well, too. Now, obviously, they faced a really good a Seattle Seahawks team that was up for the challenge, right, in week one. That's also the healthiest every team is going to be at that point in time. But I look at our defense and I look at the skill positions that they have. And I know, like I said, that they're questionable, but I would assume Jerry Jeudy, unless he can't play like at all, I assume he plays. I actually mentioned Albert Okwuegbunam, their tight end. I thought he was a breakout candidate this year. One, because I have seen Russell Wilson make average or even below average tight ends look better because he's able to kind of scramble. He's also, I think, pretty good on the seam routes as well, too. So I've seen Russell Wilson take tight ends to that next level. When I look at Albert Okwuegbunam, he's super athletic, super fast. Now, through the first 2 weeks, he hasn't been all that effective, but he's still a guy that I look at and say, okay, well, if Jerry Jeudy is out, well, I think he probably slides in as maybe their second best option on a down by down passing basis. Obviously, Cortland Sutton still being number one. So I look at that and I say, okay, interesting. That's another guy to watch out for. And then just for 49ers fans' sake, we're going up against DJ Jones and we're going up against K'Wan Williams. Like, I'm kind of curious how those two guys are going to respond on the defensive side of the ball. If Pat Surtain's not able to go, the Broncos actually drafted a cornerback I was really high on. I know that you guys have followed me for a little while too. I had made probably 2 or 3 posts about this guy out of Pitt, and that's Damari Mathis, first round or not first round. I forgot what round they drafted him in, but a corner that they drafted out of Pitt. I think he'd probably get the start if Pat Surtain does go down. Now, he'd be making, I think it would be technically his first start, and he's gotten some reps here and there, but I look at that and I say, just like I said last week on Nate's show, can Brandon Ayuk take advantage of a Damari Mathis? Like he took advantage of Kyler Gordon in week 1, and like he was able to take advantage of Michael Jackson last week. I think Brandon Ayuk had 8 targets, 5 catches, but he was able to force multiple PIs.
They drafted him in round 4 or pick 150.
Okay, round 4. Gotcha. But I look at those guys and I say, you know what? Should the Denver Broncos start everybody? I think it'll be an interesting game, but I do think that they're still missing something right now. I won't go so far as to say Russell Wilson isn't who we thought he was, but there are some prominent Seattle Seahawks former teammates coming out, finally starting to say some things about Russell Wilson that aren't in the best light. And maybe some of that is starting to come to light now, not only by them, but a little bit by his play. And maybe some of that has to do with his coach's lack of ability to go for it on 4th and 5 too, which I thought was a little crazy.
So right now the spread, am I muted? No. All right. So right now the spread is what? Niners plus 1.5. So technically you get 3 points for home field advantage. So a lot of the bettors are betting the Broncos in this game. So for Vegas right there. And so I think you're looking at that, a win on the road. You can see it. You can see how that goes in. I wonder if, I saw the defense versus their wide receivers with a banged up Surtain and a shoulder, like taking the bruising hits that Debo likes to give out, and the corners there, like does their secondary really match up with our wide receivers? Is Surtain going to follow Debo around the field, or is he just going to play whoever's in front of him at that point? Obviously, he's not going to follow him into the backfield, but we like to move him everywhere. And so is he going to really just play that lockdown role and follow all the way across, or is he just going to play whoever's in front of him? Can Kyle Shanahan then scheme? If he's just playing one side of the field, can Kyle Shanahan scheme away from their best player and utilize our players in the best light? I think that'll be an interesting something to look at as well.
Yep. Well, last topic of the day. I gotta get out of here. I'm hungry, and I know y'all got work probably and other things, so y'all probably also gotta get out of here. But quick score predictions. If you want to start it off, Randon, then you can go Jamal, and then I'll finish it off. But what is your score prediction? If you had to give a score for this game, what would you give it?
Yeah, 21-17 Niners. I'm going to take 27, one score game. I think it'll be.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to go 27-24 49ers, and I'm going to give them 24 points because I'm going to go out on a limb and say that although they're still working through some kinks, and this is the Broncos that I'm talking about, I do think that they're a little bit better than we want to give them credit for because they lost to the Seahawks in week 1. But I do think that much like us, when we played in that monsoon game, there were many self-inflicted wounds. Russell Wilson was still able to throw for like 369. I don't think Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon are going to fumble back-to-back in the red zone often, maybe never again. So I'll go 27-24 out of respect to Russell Wilson. I'm going to be totally honest. I respect him. He's been the boogeyman for so long against us. He's going to have some comfortability against us as well, too. That doesn't mean he's going to play amazing. And I do think the Niners do win. But I look at those things and say, you know what? It is a familiar foe. Yes, it's with some new weapons. I'll go 27-24 Niners. And I'm going to go that because I do think that we can still win time of possession and third downs. If that happens, I think we win.
I'll go 24-17. I think the Niners get a late field goal. I think it'll be a close game. Obviously, it's going to be a tough matchup on the road, Sunday Night Football, primetime. But I'll pick the Niners to win this one. Now, obviously, I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners lost this game. I feel like there's a lot of games this season where they're tough.
Is he breaking up for you, Randon, or is that just me?
Yeah, he's breaking up. Yeah,
breaking up pretty good, buddy.
All right, can y'all hear me now?
There we go.
Yeah, much better.
Better? All right. Yeah, it's gonna be a tough game. Now, I don't know if you guys heard the score. I said 24-17. I think the Niners get the W. Obviously, I mean, like that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Niners also lost this game because a lot of the games on the schedule are toss-ups, right? Tampa Bay's a toss-up. Kansas City's a toss-up. Against the Chargers is a toss-up, right? And obviously, not some teams are favored over the Niners. But a lot of these games, I go the Niners win. They couldn't go the Niners way, right? So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, I want the 49ers to win. I feel like a lot of us want the 49ers to win, but it's definitely going to be a fun matchup. Obviously, I agree with you, Jamal. I respect Russell Wilson. He's been the 49ers kryptonite for a lot of seasons, and for whatever reason, we just couldn't beat Seattle, and we've only beaten Seattle like 3 times in the last 20 times we've played them. So Seattle, for whatever reason, has been their kryptonite, and Russell Wilson has been a huge part of that over the last couple of years. And I remember when I started watching football, like the first couple of seasons I started watching football, I mean, Russell Wilson would blow out the 49ers. Like, he would destroy the 49ers. And this was like Jim Tomsula, Chip Kelly. Like, he would go up on Thursday Night Football and put up like 30 on this 49ers team. And I'm like sitting there as like a 10 or 9-year-old. I'm like, dang it. Like, I was rooting for my team. Dang it. Right at that time, I didn't know football. Like, I didn't really follow football as much as I do now. But I was like, every week I would go in thinking like the Niners have a chance, and then Russell Wilson would come and put up 30, and I'm like, nope, we're getting blown out. We're not winning this game. But it's gonna be fun to see, and I'm looking forward to it. 49ers Broncos. I mean, it's definitely gonna be a good game.
Can I ask you guys who is your X factor, offense or defense, for the 49ers?
For offense, it's going to be the X factor. I think it's going to be George Kittle in this game.
Who knows if he can even go in this game? I thought he was limited in practice.
If he's healthy, he's the X factor because the linebacking core is relatively weak for the Broncos, and I think they need to exploit the middle of the field if they can.
I like that one.
I don't know. Probably if I had to go someone defense, maybe Bosa. Maybe see if he can have a big sack game, and then Charvarius Ward and the corners. I think the corners. It's definitely going to be an interesting matchup, and I mean this is going to be a test for the 49ers defense, right? This whole season, especially the secondary, it's going to be we obviously seen DK and Tyler Lockett, and they did a hell of a job against them. But to be fair, I mean Geno Smith isn't Russell Wilson, right? And so when you have a guy that can make throws and can thread the needle in Russell Wilson, we've seen him do that before. It's definitely going to be an interesting matchup, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think if I had to pick the X factor, like not necessarily a specific player, but I would say that secondary to see how Emmanuel Mosley and Trivarius Ward, square up against, KJ Hamler or Cortland Sutton, or if Jerry Jeudy can go, it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup, and I'm looking forward to it. I mean, if I had to pick the X factor, I would go the secondary.
You know what? I'm actually with you on that. I was gonna pick one specific, I was gonna pick Talanoa Hufanga, but I'm starting to think that I kind of know what to expect from him. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be a pick every week, but as you had mentioned earlier, he has shown at least through 2 weeks so far that he's a ball hawk. I believe, week 1 versus the Bears in a monsoon game. We're not throwing a whole lot, but he had 1 pass deflection, which was tied for the lead as a safety, and then last week he had two pass deflections as well too. He also had a pick in week 1 as well. So those opportunistic plays he's shown so far that when they're there, he makes them. My X factor is actually going to be Sam Womack in this game. I know Randon had talked about him as well too. Yeah, he's going to be my X factor because, like you had just mentioned this, Amin, you've got your KJ Hamlers, Jerry Jeudy, should he play? Cortland Sutton might even slide to the slot here and there. Like, he's going to be going up against possibly all 3 of those guys at different points in time. Will he continue to hold up? I think he can, but I do think that Russell Wilson, who's a smart veteran quarterback, probably will test him as well too. I think he knows what he's going up against in a Charvarius Ward. He knows what he's going up against in a Emmanuel Mosley. Not that those guys won't get targeted, but I think he's going to test out this kid early and often in Sam Womack, and I think we get to see who the real Sam Womack is this week. So he's my X factor.
Yep, that's definitely a great pick. But that basically wraps up the show. We've gone for over an hour and 20 minutes. I appreciate both of you guys' valuable time. It was definitely fun talking football with you, Randon, obviously, and you, Jamal. We're going to be doing this every other week on Wednesdays, and me and Randon obviously go on every Tuesday. But it was definitely fun. If you haven't already checked out Randon's YouTube channel, Cerberus Sports Talk, go subscribe to his channel. Go follow him on Twitter. The link is in the description. And if you are a hockey fan, go check out Hockey Royalty. The link is in the description. Ooh. Twitter, YouTube, podcast, wherever you can find your podcast. Go check out Hockey Royalty. The link is in the description. And also go check out my man Jamal, his YouTube. He had one last year, but now he's one half and he's the co-host of Niner Nate's Nonsense. And they go on Tuesdays and I think Thursdays. So go check out Niner Nate's channel. Jamal's on there with him and Kevin, I think, right, Kevin?
That's correct.
With him and Kevin. So go check that out. The link is in the description of Niner Nate's channel. Go follow Jamal on Twitter. That link is also in the description. And go follow his co-host Nate on Twitter as well. It was a pleasure meeting him on Sunday. So all the links are in the description. We were supposed to have Crypto Ryan on the show today, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it. But his links are also Yeah, his links are also in the description. YouTube at No Border Sports, Twitter at No Border Sports, and his Twitter. So go check out his links. Also follow him, subscribe to his YouTube channel, follow him on Twitter. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go do so. It would be greatly appreciated. I appreciate both of you guys for coming on with me tonight. Hopefully the Niners get a W on Sunday. And that basically wraps up the show. I appreciate y'all for joining me. Thank you for whoever was watching this show. But that basically wraps up the show. See y'all later. Peace.
Stay safe.